Hello everyone, it's Nox, and here's a short video summarizing the changes coming in patch 1.2 to Diablo 4 in Season 2, the Season of Blood, which goes live on October 17th. Big changes first. They actually fix resistances in a way that makes sense, and has for 23 years. Resistances will be additive with a baseline cap of 70%, which can be increased to 85% with certain gear, elixirs, and buffs. I personally think this is the only viable way to fix them. The D3 style infinite scaling with diminishing returns doesn't feel good and never has. There's a reason why most ARPGs just copied D2's resistance system. They work. And if the game is tuned around you having capped res, they'll feel like they matter. This is a big win for having D4 have items that actually feel good to find. Speaking of items, we will also be getting 12 new unique items and 7 new legendary aspects. Not going over all of these individually, I'm excited to see what builds people come up with. And seeing these gives me a lot of new build ideas to try out, specifically the Boulderden Druid Amulet. Look at this thing, it looks incredible. I hope more uniques have effects like this in the future. On the topic of uniques, nearly all of them are being changed, and by changed, I mean buffed. No telling how impactful these will all be in the meta. We'll see what sorts of builds the community comes up with, but these changes are worth at least looking at them again. The UI is also receiving an update that is really just features that should have been there at launch, but since I'm a longtime Blizzard fan, I know how to take what I can get and be happy about it. I'm sure none of you guys can relate. We have a stash that's actually functional. Also, extracted aspects with the same legendary power will be grouped together when you sort them, so they'll actually be sorted. We're not going to get a gem tab, unfortunately, but we got the next best thing, gem fragments. Yep, in Season 2, gems no longer drop, but we get fragments instead, and you use these to craft the gems. For me personally, this alleviates nearly 30 spaces in my stash. You'll likely only craft gems that you need, socket them, and then be done until you get an upgrade or want to move things around. It's worth noting that you can break gems back down into fragments if you no longer need them.
those elixirs.
The consumable tab will also be less full in patch 1.2 because they nerfed random elixirs dropping from monsters.
The solution for stash space was to not give us the items?
This is a weird change. I feel like if they buffed elixir mats in the open world to compensate, this would be much better. A likely positive change for many is that renown now carries over 100%, so there's no need to grind it out each season. There's some quality of life changes regarding world bosses and Helltide. These are now more visible with warnings leading up to their start, and you can see them from anywhere. Items can be marked as favorite, so no more salvaging an item you just spent 100 million gold re-rolling. Speaking of rolling, it takes about 50% less gold to re-roll items now, which is nice. Feeling like gold was a limiting factor just feels lame to me. Towns are also getting a buff. Every town with a waypoint has a stash, and stashes are now closer to important vendors in major cities. There's also a very important bit about items. The cap is now 925 item power, and sacreds and ancestrals have different ranges. Also, higher level monsters drop higher level loot as a baseline. This means if you're fighting a level 80 monster, you will get a higher item level on average as a baseline than fighting a level 70 monster. Imagine such a world. Overall, this is a substantial buff for higher level characters and those doing higher level content. You'll probably feel like you're getting meaningful upgrades for much longer over the course of your character's progression. Speaking of content, unlike Season 1, we may have got some. We have a new seasonal quest line, hopefully longer and more fun than Season 1's, and so far the voice acting has been phenomenal. Gemma Chan has done a great job from the previews that I have seen. Gameplay wise, it also brings a host of 22 classic Gnostic vampire powers with some cool effects. I'll link a list below for you guys to catch out. Many of these seem very strong, and you'll likely want several of these powers on your build. We are getting 3 new bosses and 2 reused ones to slay. The big thing is that these have increased chances of specific loot dropping, and you have access to them from collecting fragments from other content such as Whispers, Helltide, and World Bosses. Uber Duriel is one of these, and he has a higher chance of dropping Uber uniques. This means farming him will likely be part of your in-game focus if you want that shiny Shaco. I'll cover this more in another video, but I think this is a great change. It gives you a reason to engage with something other than Nightmare Dungeons past level 50. Moving on, outdoor content has received a substantial buff in XP, and general monsters give more XP at higher levels than before. XP bonuses are now also multiplicative. Also, your mount shouldn't get stuck on everything known to man in the open world. Blizz is claiming that you'll get to level 100 40% faster than before. My carpal tunnel feels better already. On the topic of things that hurt less, Nightmare Dungeons have been changed for the better. Porting there actually ports you there, not just outside. Saving a loading screen, which is a big win. Nightmare Dungeons have also received a layout fix, making them a bit less easy to get lost in, and they have less pointless backtracking. Also, many of them have had objectives just removed, so you run in, kill some monsters, and kill the boss. I personally prefer this method anyway. I like some of the objectives, but doing the same ones over and over and having to find the last little person in the corner of a map gets tedious and annoying. Also, the affixes that suck less. This is a thumbs up. It's a good thing. Additionally, the class you play has received some changes. Too many for this video, but go check them out and I'll cover them in a future one. There's also a huge list of bug fixes that will hopefully bring us out of the alpha and into the beta test of the game. Finally, and this is the big one, vulnerable and crit damage are no longer damage multipliers when we're talking about the stats on your gear. Vulnerable always gives a 20% damage multiplier. Crit always gives a 50% damage multiplier. And all the crit and vulnerable damage that's on your gear is now part of the additive damage bucket, similar to damage with core skills or cold damage or fire damage, etc. While this may sound terrible for damage, and it is, the D4 team is nerfing monster power to supposedly compensate. If you care about the math, Macro Bio Boy does a great job of explaining it in a video linked below, but it's beyond the scope of this overview. And that's it. If you enjoyed this short overview of the patch notes, please leave a like down below as it helps me out quite a bit. Full patch notes are in the description if you'd like to read them. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.